Hello, everyone. This is Coach Matt for the Seattle Chess School. In this video, I would like to try to make a case for reversed openings. This video was inspired from a conversation that happened in a chess club about 30 years ago, many years ago, when 4 or 5 chess players are hanging around. And one day, someone asked, what happens if you play the white pieces, but you try to play your favorite black defense, but you play it with an extra move since we get to go first? And so we thought about it. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the English opening. If we play c4 and our opponent plays e5, essentially what we have here is a Sicilian defense with an extra move. Okay, so this is easy to understand. Once we figured that out, we quickly figured out that playing the King's Indian defense with the white pieces gives one the King's Indian defense with an extra move. So for example, knight to f3, d5, g3, c5, bishop g2, knight c6, castle, e5, and d3. Thus achieving the King's Indian defense, but with the extra tempo, we could possibly make something of this. So this was very inspiring. All right. Same thing with the Catalan opening, which is basically the Gruenfeld defense with the white pieces, with the extra advantage that black will not get a two-pawn center. In the normal Gruenfeld defense, we have g6, we have knight c3, we have d5, capture, capture, and white is able to establish a two-pawn center. If white plays the Gruenfeld defense with an extra move, so this way we would have d4, and if black plays d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, and g3, this is known as the Catalan, which is essentially a Gruenfeld defense with an extra tempo. But in this particular line, black will not be able to achieve a two-pawn center. Trying to get the move in e5 is going to be quite difficult. So this was rather nice to figure out. Then someone came up with the idea of a3. And at first we laughed at this idea. It's like, okay, fine. So you make a soft move on the queen side. It doesn't do anything with development. It doesn't do anything about the center of the board. But the initial idea by the person that came up with this was that whatever black plays here, white will just simply play their favorite defense. So for example, if the opponent plays e5, we would play our favorite e4 defense with the move a3 played. And we quickly figured out that after, if the person playing white is normally an e4, e5 player when they have black, if they simply play e4 and black plays knight f6 to attack the pawn, as they would in most king pawn games, and we simply defend this guy, we can figure out that if black plays the Ruy Lopez, this isn't going to be quite so good when the bishop can just be captured. We also quickly figured out is that if the person playing black is a fried liver player on bishop to c5, and if white plays the two knights defense and black plays the fried liver, then after d4, e takes d4, and white plays the main move knight to a4 attacking the bishop, once again, the main move would be bishop to b4 check, which is taken away by that mysterious a3 move. Okay, so this is just some considerations here. Now, on a3, if the person that is playing black is a queen pawn player, then we would, the idea was to simply play your favorite queen pawn defense. So for example, if white happens to be a Benko Gambit player, they could play knight to f3 because you would play knight f3, you would play knight f6 on your first move if white had played d4. And if black goes for a queen's gambit, then we could play c5, trying to set up the Benko. And if black plays d4, then when we play b4, interesting enough here, the move a3 is actually quite useful. So here we are playing a Benko Gambit with an extra move, and the result of this extra move is that we may not even have to sacrifice a pawn. If black actually captures, then white can capture back immediately, and white lost no material at all and has good chances of setting up normal Benko-ish positions, G3, D3, Bishop G2, etc. So in this opening, A3 turns out to be quite useful. If against this Queen's Gambit, White likes to play the Nimzo-Indian defense, of course, here we would play E3, and if Knight C6, we would play the Nimzo-Indian with Bishop to B5, but it is not clear that A3 is actually even useful in this position. You can imagine that in a normal Nimzo-Indian, Knight F6, E6, and Bishop to B4, not a lot of these positions require Black to play the move A6. I mean, there's a lot of B6s, of course, and there's a lot of C5s, and there's a lot of D5s, but A6 is not really a stock Nimzo-Indian move. So to actually get that in reverse colors may not actually be an achievement. Okay, so with this in mind, we also turned our attention to the move H3. So what happens if we play H3 and then play our favorite Black defense with H3 thrown in? So for example, if E4 and suddenly we play the Sicilian defense with say C4, E5 C4 like this, well, there isn't too many Sicilians where H6 is just a common move that Black actually throws in. This is also true with E4, E5 positions. If, say now, Black plays a reverse Ruy Lopez like this, I mean, is H3 a useful move? Maybe in the future, but not really right at this second. So it might not necessarily be a move that is worth throwing in. But it could possibly work in other openings, say like, for example, D5, D4. If your opponent is a Trombovsky attack player, H3 certainly takes that away. If they are a London system player, possibly a G4 might scare them from actually doing that. So in this kind of case, H3 might actually turn out to be a good, useful move in a reverse opening. Okay, so with that in mind, we started looking at some of the other moves, and it occurred to somebody that by playing F4, now, of course, this isn't really a reverse opening. This is the birds, and everybody knows about this one. But treating it, of course, as a reverse Dutch could be possibly quite useful. I mean, whichever particular bird opening setup that you like, whether that be Knight F3, G3, Bishop G2, like a reverse Leningrad, or if you play Knight F3, E3, Bishop to E2, reverse classical, or you like to play Knight F3, E3, D4, and C3, the reverse Stonewall, having the extra tempo should, in fact, come in handy. And also because of the fact that F4 not only seizes kingside space, but it also attacks the kingside in such a way that White will almost assuredly get some sort of initiative on this side of the board at some point in the game. So this means that all White has to do is time that initiative correctly. And with an extra tempo and playing it like, some sort of Dutch system, this could be like the king of the reverse openings, quite possibly. Okay, then in this conversation, it was my turn to make a contribution, and I suddenly threw out the move D3. And of course, this looks rather wimpy, but someone asked me what's the idea behind this. And I quickly basically explained that depending on how the opponent responds and how the opponent plays, we could actually play a defense or drag the opponent into an opening that they may never have played before. So for example, if we play D3 against somebody who is a confirmed Knight F3 player when they have the white pieces, and suddenly because they see this small move D3, they decide to get brave and decide to throw out a king pawn game. Like so. Well, because our opponent is not normally a king pawn player, at this moment we could actually go into a king pawn defense that they might not have ever faced. For example, White could play D4 and suddenly double step with the D pawn. Now here what we have is a Scandinavian defense. This would be E4 D5. So in this so that's what this is. So what we can do is actually get this in reverse colors just by doing a double step. So D3, E5, D4, and here we are. And black now has to either rely on some other experience. If they have never played this opening before, you might have actually tricked them into something that they might play weakly. W-E-A-K-L-Y is what I mean. For the same reason, after D3, E5, we could possibly play something like E4 and go into a Philidor in reverse. The Philidor defense is E4, E5, Knight F3, D6. Okay, so by playing D3, we are playing something of an accelerated Philidor like this, E4, E5, E4. And again, depending on the opponent, they might not be normal king pawn players. So this would be something that you could, trick them into. Now, if your opponent plays D5 here, there's, a couple of different ways that we could play a reversed opening. Number one is to play E3. This is interesting because whichever way black goes, we could play a mainline defense, black defense with the white pieces. For example, if black decides to grab all of the center, suddenly we could double step with the D pawn and we are in the French defense, reverse colors. And for those that like to play the French defense, you might actually like playing it with the white pieces too. You never know. And you could get your opponent to get it if you can get your opponent to go into this. If in this position your opponent plays C5 and plays a Queen's Gambit, then again you could double step with the D pawn, and now you're playing a Queen's Gambit decline. And if this is something that you particularly like with the black pieces, you can actually play it with white and have the exact same position. But you could do this against opponents, of course, that might not be so familiar with how to play the Queen's Gambit. Okay, so D3 does this, and because this was possible with D3, suddenly we started to figure out we could do this with almost any move. For example, the move C3. C3 might, of course, be a prelude to some sort of Slav defense or a Caro-Kann, depending on how black plays. If black actually plays E5 and white plays D4, this is a Caro-Kann defense with an extra move. However, there is one other technical detail, and that is if black captures, white could capture with the queen. And this leads to the center counter defense. Now, once again, or the Scandinavian, and imagine that if you play the Scandi and queen takes D5 and knight to C3, there are three moves that are very popular here: D6, D8, and A5. And in a lot of these particular systems, the move C6 is usually played. So this way it will give room for the queen on C7. Just in case the queen goes to A5, you could play C6 and queen C7. Sometimes you could play queen D8 and then queen C7. In these kind of positions. Of course, you don't play C6 right now. You have to do something with the queen. But C6 is awfully useful in all of these lines. Well, if that is true, then after C6, E5, D4 takes, white might be able to take advantage of this no matter which version of the Scandinavian that you like, because C3 has already been played. And so, that extra tempo into, building up one of, these typical positions, knight F3, bishop G4, bishop G5, knight BD7, E3, move out the bishop and castle. You can get all of this with one extra move, which couldn't hurt. Also the same with the move E3. Now, with this one, we can go, a couple different, kind of oddball ways. Like, for example, if black plays D5, and if you're a type of person that likes the Englund Gambit, which is D4, E5, I know this is extremely popular nowadays. Well, you could actually try to trick your opponent into this by playing E3, D5, and then double stepping with the E pawn, like so. And here we have the Englund Gambit in reverse. So this could be useful someday. If your opponent plays E5 and for some reason you like to play, say, the Petrov defense and you like to get the Stafford Gambit, you could actually go into this by going E4. And when they play knight F6, knight F3, then you have a Stafford Gambit in reverse. And again, you could, get your favorite positions in a tricky and crafty way. So these are basically the main ideas here. Basically, the main idea with this video is to kind of show that by playing a small move on the first turn of some kind, something like this, and trying to get a reverse opening where you're playing your favorite black defense with an extra move can sometimes be handy in certain situations. So hopefully this will be, a thought-provoking video where you guys can use this to your advantage. All right, so we'll end it with that. This has been Coach Matt for the Seattle Chess School, and we will see you guys on the next one.